always thought I knew my father. He was a quiet man, reserved, thoughtful, the kind who never raised his voice but always managed to command respect. When he died, I felt a hole rip through my chest, but I told myself it was the natural order of things. He had lived a full life, and he passed peacefully in his sleep. Or so I thought. It was 2 weeks after the funeral when I found the letter. I wasn't looking for anything, just trying to clean out the last of his things before selling his house. I'd opened the drawer of his old writing desk, the one he kept locked for as long as I could remember. It had always been off limits. I never questioned it, thinking it was just filled with mundane paperwork or maybe old bills. But the lock was broken. It clicked open with ease. Inside there was a worn envelope with my name on it. To Ava, when I'm gone. The handwriting was shaky but unmistakably his. I sat down right there on the floor, heart racing, palms clammy, and I read it. By the time I reached the second paragraph, I was shaking. My eyes couldn't believe the words. My father, stoic, gentle, private, had been hiding something dark. Not just a secret, a betrayal. One that had haunted him for years. One that would change everything I thought I knew about my life and about the people I trusted most. I need to tell you the truth before I'm gone, the letter began. Because they won't, because the lies have gone on long enough. I read it once, then twice. Each time a new realization punched me in the gut. Every word felt like a scream from the grave. The world I'd built, the relationships I cherished, they were illusions. And worst of all, my own mother was at the center of it all. She always played the grieving widow so convincingly. At the funeral, she'd sobbed into my shoulder like her world had ended. But my father's letter exposed her for who she really was. A liar, a manipulator, a thief. I loved you too much to tell you while I was alive, he wrote. But now you need to know. You deserve the truth. She betrayed me. And she betrayed you too. The last line was burned into my mind. Don't let her take what's yours. Don't let her rewrite the truth. In that moment, I understood why he'd waited until after death to tell me. He knew it would destroy me. But he also knew I was the only one who could set things right. I folded the letter with trembling fingers, tucked it into my jacket, and walked out of the house with one thought echoing in my mind. She's going to pay. Not with violence, not with chaos, but with the truth. This wasn't going to be a breakdown. It was going to be a reckoning. The days after reading that letter were a blur of rage, disbelief, and grief. I couldn't eat. I barely slept. I kept rereading his words, searching for some misunderstanding, but every line only made the truth clearer. My mother had betrayed my father. Not in the ordinary way of drifting apart or petty lies. No, this went deeper. It was financial, calculated, cold. According to the letter, she had manipulated my father into signing over assets, convinced him to change the terms of their estate, and siphoned off money from his personal accounts. And while he was dealing with his declining health, she had been building her own escape route. Her plan was to ensure that when he died, she'd walk away with everything, leaving me, their only daughter, with nothing. I was too weak to fight her, he admitted in the letter, but you're not. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was confused. Maybe the medications affected his mind. But the next morning, I drove to his lawyer's office. Mr. Halverson had known our family for over 2 decades. I hadn't seen him since the funeral, and when I walked into his office with the letter, his expression changed before I even said a word. He read it in silence, then looked up at me with tired, regretful eyes. Your father wasn't wrong, he said slowly. He came to me just before he passed. He wanted to change the will, but he didn't make it in time. What do you mean? I asked, my throat dry. Your mother had him sign over the house and all liquid assets under her name last year. At the time, he thought it was temporary, for tax purposes, he said. But it wasn't. She'd been planning this for a while. I stared at him, stunned. So she lied to him? Tricked him? He nodded. I couldn't say anything before, but now, yes, that's exactly what she did. The rage that bloomed in my chest was suffocating. My mother had always worn this mask of kindness and control, the perfect image of the dutiful wife and grieving widow. But she'd gutted him financially while he was dying. And me? I had no idea. I was too busy trusting her. To make it worse, she had already started selling off assets. I checked public records. My childhood. Home was already listed. My name wasn't on anything. She hadn't even told me. I confronted her that night. I know what you did, I said quietly, as she stirred tea at the kitchen counter, calm as ever. She didn't flinch. She didn't deny it. She just looked at me and said, Your father made his choices. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Harder? She'd gutted our family's legacy, betrayed her husband in his final days. And now, she wanted me to smile and let it go? That was the moment something inside me snapped. She thought she'd won. She thought she had tied everything up in a neat little bow and walked away unscathed. But she underestimated one thing. Me. She didn't know about the letter. She didn't know I'd seen through the lies. And now, she was going to learn what it felt like to have everything ripped away, slowly, methodically, and without warning. Just like she'd done to him. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to get smart. Get prepared. Because this wasn't just personal anymore. It was war. I spent the next few days spiraling between grief and fury, but underneath it all was one persistent thought I couldn't shake. This wasn't just about the money. It wasn't even just about the betrayal. It was about the legacy. About what my father built, what he left behind, and how she tried to erase him from it. I kept thinking about the way he used to look at our house, the pride in his voice when he talked about putting me through school, building a future. My father was a man who worked quietly, without complaint, so that his family would be okay long after he was gone. And now? It was all being auctioned off. The house he built with his own hands, sold behind my back. His retirement savings, gone. His belongings boxed up like junk to be shipped out or tossed away. He was being erased. His name, his effort, his memory, vanishing. One bank transaction at a time. My mother hadn't just stolen money. She'd stolen his dignity. And mine. Because now I was left with nothing. No inheritance, no safety net, no family heirlooms. Nothing but a letter and a growing burning fire in my chest. I had put my trust in her for years. After my father got sick, I deferred to her on everything. I figured she was taking care of things, as a wife should, as a mother would. But she wasn't protecting us. She was protecting herself. Worse, she played the long game. The fake hospital tears. The drawn-out story of how Dad never wanted to change the will. She made me feel guilty for even questioning it, like I was being disrespectful for digging into the details of his estate. But now it was all clear. She didn't want me asking questions. She didn't want me poking around. Because the deeper I dug, the more truth I uncovered, and the more monstrous she became. I thought about the last conversation I had with my dad before he passed. He looked tired. He squeezed my hand and said, "Just remember, Ava, not everything is what it seems." At the time, I thought he was just speaking in riddles. But now I understood. He knew. He couldn't fight her. Not in the state he was in. But he hoped I would. And that's why this mattered. Because if I let her get away with this, then she wins. She rewrites the story. She paints herself the victim and walks away with everything. My father becomes just another quiet man who died with regrets. And I'd be the foolish daughter who didn't see it coming. But I wasn't that anymore. I didn't care about revenge for revenge's sake. I wasn't going to burn her world, down just to watch it fall. No. I was going to make her answer for what she did. To my father. To me. To the life we were supposed to have. I started documenting everything. Copies of the will, transaction records, real estate listings, emails, every scrap of evidence that could help me prove she defrauded my father. I knew it wouldn't be easy. People like her were good at hiding things. She'd covered her tracks well. But she made one mistake. She left me out of it. She assumed I was too naive, too emotional to see the truth. And in doing so, she gave me the one thing she didn't plan for. Nothing to lose. And when someone has nothing to lose, that's when they become dangerous. The first thing I did was silence my emotions. I couldn't let anger cloud my thinking. If I was going to take her down, I had to be smarter than she was, colder, calculated. So I started from the beginning, my father's letter. I read it again, this time not as a grieving daughter, but as an investigator. I underlined key details, dates, names. He mentioned a second will he never got to sign. A lawyer he trusted, but hadn't had time to meet again. A bank account he feared she had emptied. It was like a treasure map. The next step was legal. I made an appointment with Mr. Halverson again, this time with more focus. If I can prove she coerced him into signing everything over, can we challenge it? I asked. He nodded slowly. It won't be easy. She'll claim it was all voluntary. But if we can prove undue influence or mental incapacity at the time of the transfer, yes, the court can intervene. But we'd need proof, I said. And you'll need to act quickly. She's already started selling assets. Once they're gone. I didn't need him to finish the sentence. So I made a list, a real plan. Something solid, something tactical. Secure documentation. I started collecting everything. Financial statements, old emails, voicemails. I found a folder in Dad's computer labeled Hold, and inside were copies of documents she thought she'd hidden. Withdrawal slips, signed authorizations she pressured him into. Even a draft of the new will, saved and dated just 2 weeks before he died. Find witnesses. I reached out to people who had seen my parents during Dad's final year. A nurse from his care facility, an old friend who'd dropped by once a week, even the financial advisor he'd visited just before his health started failing. I didn't tell them everything, just enough to get them talking. And what they said matched the timeline in the letter. My father had wanted to change things. He was lucid, but every time he tried, something stopped him. That something was my mother. Track her activity. She was careless now, arrogant. She thought the game was over, and she'd already won. So she stopped hiding things. Her phone was always buzzing with calls from realtors. I overheard her on the phone bragging about liquidating assets. I even found a printed checklist in the kitchen. Move funds to personal account, sell remaining stocks, list cabin property next week. She wasn't just cleaning up. She was covering her tracks, and that meant it was time to expose her. The plan was simple. Build a case, piece by piece, present it to a lawyer, file an injunction to stop the asset sales, drag everything she did into the light of a courtroom where charm and crocodile tears wouldn't protect her. But I didn't stop there. I started recording our conversations. Anytime she mentioned the estate, I made sure I got it on tape. I saved every message. I even followed her one afternoon when she claimed she was visiting a friend, only to watch her pull up to a private banking office downtown. She was still moving money. Fast. But I was faster. I wasn't the daughter she used to manipulate anymore. I was something else now. Something sharper. Each piece I gathered was like loading bullets into a gun she never thought I'd fire. She underestimated me, just like she had underestimated my father. But what she didn't know, what she never saw coming, was that this letter, his last words, weren't just his confession. They were my call to arms. And now, I was ready. Once the plan was in place, it was time to move. No more strategizing in silence. I needed results, and fast. Step 1. I filed a petition with probate court. With Halverson's help, I submitted the letter, the draft will, and supporting evidence to initiate a formal dispute over the estate. That petition included a detailed timeline, screenshots of financial activity, and signed statements from 2 people who had witnessed my father say he wanted to change his will. The court granted a temporary injunction, which meant she could no longer sell or transfer any assets until the case was heard. It was the first crack in her armor. She got served 2 days later, and just like that, the mask slipped. "What the hell is this?" she hissed over the phone. I didn't answer, with emotion. I didn't let her bait me. "You'll have a chance to explain yourself in court," I said, calm and cold. She hung up. Step 2. I went public. Not in a tabloid way, but through our community. People in our town respected my father. They remembered him as kind, generous, a mentor to many. I met with a few old friends of his and told them, carefully, selectively, what was happening. They were stunned. But more importantly, they were willing to speak up. A former co-worker who had helped Dad with some investments agreed to submit a formal statement about his mental clarity and intent to change the will. The hospice nurse who cared for him said, on the record, that my mother often refused to let him be alone with visitors. And more importantly, my father's financial advisor found a paper trail. Apparently, months before he died, my dad had tried to transfer the house into a trust under both our names. But my mother blocked it, claiming he was confused and that she'd handle it. The advisor had concerns but didn't push further. Now, with my evidence, he was willing to testify. Step 3. I dug deeper, into her finances. This part took time and precision. I knew she had offshore accounts. Dad mentioned them in the letter vaguely. She started funneling money out of the country. I worked with a forensic accountant who specialized in estate fraud. We went through every suspicious transaction, mapped out the flow of money from joint accounts into newly created shell entities, some under names I recognized, some under names I didn't. She thought she was smart, but she'd left enough breadcrumbs to follow. The accountant put together a report that painted a damning picture, one of a systematic dismantling of my father's financial empire, done quietly over 2 years, under the guise of caregiving. Step EU, for I prepared for court. I wasn't just walking in as a grieving daughter, I was walking in as a whistleblower. My case was tight. The narrative was clear. A woman who, under the cover of terminal illness, coerced and manipulated a man into signing away everything. I rehearsed my statements with Halverson, practiced how to stay composed. The letter would be the anchor, but the supporting documentation would be the storm. My mother tried once to intimidate me into dropping the case. She showed up at my apartment, calm smile on her face, and said, "You really want to drag the family through this? For what? A little money?" I looked her dead in the eye. It's not about money. It's about justice. And for the first time, I saw fear behind her eyes. She knew she was cornered. I wasn't just trying to undo what she did. I was holding her accountable in front of the world. She'd taken advantage of a dying man and gambled on his silence. But she never expected. His silence would turn into my voice, my advice. If you ever find yourself betrayed, especially by someone you trusted most, don't let them control the narrative. Don't rush into revenge blindly. Build your case. Get smart. Get organized. Every lie they tell leaves a trail. All you have to do is follow it, and be brave enough to shine a light when it matters most. Because liars love the dark, and I was ready to burn the whole thing down with the truth. The courtroom was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that sinks into your skin. I could hear the hum of the air conditioner, the scratch of pens, the faint shuffling of papers. But mostly, I heard my own heartbeat. My mother sat across from me, flanked by her lawyer. She wore a charcoal gray suit, her hair pinned up in a pristine twist, her face expressionless. The image of poise and control. But I saw through it. I saw the tension in her jaw, the white knuckles, the eyes that refused to meet mine. She knew. She just didn't know how much I had. When I took the stand, I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I read from my notes, walked the court through the timeline, submitted the documents, presented the witnesses' statements. Every word I spoke tightened the net around her. Then I read the letter. Not all of it, just the part that mattered most. If you're reading this, then she won. But it doesn't have to stay that way. I need you to be strong, Ava. Stronger than I was. I looked up then, right at her, and I saw the color drain from her face. Her lawyer scrambled, tried to poke holes in the timeline, claimed my father wasn't of sound mind when he wrote that letter, claimed I fabricated the evidence. But the forensic accountant took the stand next, and with surgical precision, dismantled every lie. Account by account, transaction by transaction. The judge listened, took notes, and in the end, when he ruled, his words hit the air like a thunderclap. This court finds evidence of coercion, financial manipulation, and undue influence. The will is hereby invalidated. The estate will revert to its prior structure pending further review. My mother gasped. For the first time, I saw real panic on E.T. Her face, but it wasn't over. The forensic report had been shared with the district attorney's office. Criminal charges were now pending. Fraud, elder abuse, embezzlement. She stood up, tried to leave with dignity. But there's no dignity in downfall. Not when your lies are laid bare. Not when the daughter you underestimated tears down the facade you built. I walked out of that courtroom lighter. Not because I got everything back. Not because the house or the money would fix the damage. But because I had made it right. My father wasn't forgotten. He wasn't erased. His voice, long silenced, was heard again, through me. Weeks later, I visited his grave. I placed the court ruling beside his headstone, along with the letter he wrote me. I did it, Dad, I whispered. I kept the promise. She didn't win. And in that moment, I didn't feel like the broken, grieving daughter anymore. I felt whole. Final recap. Betrayal cuts deep, but silence cuts deeper. When my mother tried to rewrite our family history for her own gain, she underestimated two things: my father's final words and my resolve. Injustice doesn't disappear just because the world moves on. It festers, it lingers, until someone stands up to face it. I could have walked away. I could have buried the truth with my father. But instead, I fought. I exposed every lie, challenged every false narrative, and made sure she faced the consequences. Because revenge isn't about rage. It's about justice. And karma? Karma just needed a little help.